Hello, everyone. Welcome to. Clean my glasses. Welcome to night 25 of the Orphan's Tales Live reading series. Good to see everyone. So tomorrow we will have been at this a month. This reading series, not at quarantine. We've been at quarantine for about 6 weeks. But yeah. I've been here in full makeup for you every night, except for when I was throwing up, and except for when the power was out. Oh, bad glasses. For a month. Yeah, crazy. So now, as a little month anniversary gift, or month anniversary eve gift, I will reveal that this entire time I've been wearing sweatpants underneath my nice sparkly top. It is Alice in Wonderland sweatpants tonight, says we're all mad here. But it's been sweatpants every night. I like chest up, I care enough. Chest down, I don't care at all. So you can you can know that for yourself as you watch this. I am freezing tonight. I don't know why. It's not that cold in here, but my hands, I just can't get my hands warm. So I'm sorry if I don't turn the pages very quickly or easily tonight. My fingertips are super cold. But thus is life. The show must go on. Let's do our intro business. For legal reasons, as always, this is not an audiobook of The Orphan's Tales. This is a play, a performance, a one-woman show. You can find music. Wait, have I read Deathless already? I have not read Deathless out loud. No. I chose The Orphan's Tales for this in part because there is no audiobook. So and there's this whole weird, I guess if you haven't been following from the beginning, you may not remember why I say that, why I say for legal reasons this is not an audiobook. I don't own the audio rights to this book. Random House does. However, they have never chosen to make an audiobook for reasons that passeth understanding. We've tried to get the rights back. They have not given them to us. But I do have performance rights. So this is a play, which I have the right to perform. It is not an audiobook, which I do not have the right to produce. Deathless does have an audiobook. And I chose The Orphan's Tales for that weird legalese reason, so that there would be some kind of audio of this book, which sort of screams for audio, but also because it has that sort of night-by-night structure, Arabian Nights style. Let's hope that this doesn't go on long enough that I'm asking you what other books I might read. If it does, we're all in trouble. So, and Alice in Wonderland pants, I got them at Disneyland, unfortunately, so I can't direct you to a shop nearby. So yeah, you can find music based on these books at sjtucker.com. You can subscribe to my Patreon at Kat Valenti. This is the part where I just say my name over and over again until it doesn't even sound like a word anymore. You can subscribe to my Patreon at Kat Valenti. You can follow me on Twitter at Kat Valenti. There is a tip jar on my Instagram profile as well as on my website at katherinemvalenti.com. These are absolutely free as long as the quarantine lasts, and you don't have to tip me at all. But it is a garbage time to be an artist, to be a freelance artist. And if you are so moved to toss a coin to your witch, it means the world to us and really helps us as we approach the end of the month. Thank you so much to Valeska, who tipped me last night. You're amazing. Thank you so much. And I will thank anyone who does by name on the next stream. You can catch up on the archive if you've missed any nights at it's Kat Valenti Live on YouTube. See, I screw up my own stupid name. Kat Valenti Live on YouTube. They usually go up about 2 hours after the stream ends. And you can ask questions at the end, but it does tend to be kind of awkward while I wait for people to type. So think of questions that you can start typing as soon as I stop reading. I also forgot to make myself a drink tonight, so I won't even have like the stage business of sipping on something to take a little bit of the awkwardness away. And I think that is everything. Book 2. So listen, we are 271 pages into... How many pages is this book? You'd think I'd know. 481 pages. So We tend to get through about 10 to 15 pages a night. We're almost certainly going to be able to get through this book by the time our lockdown in Maine is scheduled to end on May 15th. Will it end on May 15th? It sure didn't end on March 27th or April 15th. So I'm going to say no, probably. But I think we'll probably be finishing right around then. If we're still in lockdown, I'm still reading. If we get through book 2, God, I mean, if we get through book 2, I'm going to be streaming from a smoking hole in the ground, where our economy used to be, but, and, you know, homeless. If we get through book 2, I will take votes on what to read next. I am here with all of you for the duration, and you're here with me. And I mean, I say I'm here with all of you, and then I think of the commercials that have been out, and I want to strangle myself. If I hear one more commercial say we're all in this together when we're patently not, you guys are trying to get me to buy a car right now. We're not in this together. Apple. No. Like, the word together is starting to get to me at this point. But yeah, I think none of us were entirely prepared for it to go this long. You know, when you think about these kinds of sort of world-stopping crises, you feel like it's going to happen all at once. You feel like it's a bang and not a whimper. And I feel like the first sort of rush of we're all going to do our DIY projects, and that's the other thing. Those stupid commercials are always telling me to take advantage of my break. I'm a freelancer. There's no break. It's just that people don't pay. I still have to work. But, and also, like, we're all terrified. It's not a break. It's not a vacation. But, yeah, so I don't know. Now we're just, everyone is just stuck in a gelatinous cube, and rolling ones. And on that note, let's get back to some necromancy. All right, the Necromancer's Tale continued. The man dressed in the moon looked down at me with his blanched eyes and smiled, the sparse hairs on his chin quivering. I am a great collector, you see. I hold all these bodies in trust for my brothers and sisters, so that they may have a ready supply when they tire of their current ones. Quite a steady stream of ye come and go from me like a river, whistling its water under the moon. Come an old crone and leave a young man. Come an ice-haired northerner, go a southerner with cinnamon skin. The discards, well, all things must eat, and there is a feast day here every fortnight. But you, we've seen nothing like you. We must add your body to our treasury. In exchange, you may have one of your choice. I suppose I might have been shocked, but all I could think was the long, lithe limbs and a height which would tower over my father's. I agreed as easily as if he had offered to trade me a wooden wheel for a pair of chickens. He held me up to each row of faces in a most considerate fashion, and I pondered them all in turn. I finally settled upon a youth with skin the color of aged brandy wine, whose eyebrows arched in a noble, bemused way over his smoke-lashed eyes. He was very tall. Ah, excellent choice, my son. That was Marsili. Long ago he was a sultan's son, betrothed to a maiden of unearthly beauty, whose eyes were yellow as a wolf's. But he angered his father in some way or another, gambling or whoring most likely. Young men are so prone to such vices. And the Sultan in his wisdom sold the boy to me and married the girl himself. I'm told there's a whole dynasty of wolf-eyed sultans somewhere in the east. And he is no loss to us. Believe me, we long ago exhausted the tawdry experiences of a spoiled prince. He pushed up his grey sleeves. Shall we begin? I blinked twice, my heart thumping in me like an overworked bellows. But I cannot strangle you, father. I haven't anything like the strength. His face broadened amiably. Oh, I needn't be dead. I'm not going to take your body myself. The ye are communal. It's just as well that any other of my race uses it. A simple process in a cold room. Keep the bodies intact until they are needed. Only you must die. It will be a very small death, I promise. It It'll feel like you've swallowed a great portion of bread that's become stuck in your throat, somewhere between your mouth and your belly. Of course, a simple drink of water would push the bread down where it ought to go, but there is this curious feeling of stretching, of bulging. That is what a small death is like. This did not sound so very terrible. I straightened myself to my full height, no larger than a grasshopper, and locked my arms as I imagined brave soldiers in war must. I am ready, Father. You may kill me now. Mustn't damage the body, he chirped happily, and clamped his great clammy hand over my nose and mouth. He held it there, the smell of gardenias cloying, while I struggled and suckled at the skin for air. Finally, I slackened and slumped into the curve of his thumb. He was right. It was very like swallowing too much bread. First the alarm and the panic, then the curious stretching and the sliding release of bread into the belly. I did not float above my body, as some say one does. I stood beside it very calmly, as though I had simply been doubled. I watched the man dressed in the moon pass my tiny body through a wash of strange viscous fluid the color of costly ink. Then, pulling the slack form of Marsili from the ranks, he anointed its forehead with a musky-smelling oil. Finally, he placed an oblong white stone in the corpse's mouth and whispered a few words I could not hear over its bent head. It was as though I blinked, and when I opened my eyes again, they were Marsili's eyes. When I flexed my hands, they were Marsili's hands. When I spoke, it was with Marsili's honey-wine voice cultured by years of tutors. The stone had vanished from my mouth. I am him, I cried, looking at the man dressed in the moon directly in the eye. It was a silly thing to say, of course, but I could almost have wept for the joy of touching the cool ceiling with my own fingers. From that day I begged to be his apprentice, to learn this magic, so I would never have to die a big death. He saw no point, as the moon was no mother to me. I could not but stand at the foot of the Yi's long ladder to her. But after some time he relented, being lonely or curious or both, and I began my long education. Any sacrament can be practiced by unbelievers, he always said. It's usually nothing more than eating and drinking anyway. I could drink all I liked, and nothing I ever drank would become the moon in my mouth. But drinking is pleasant enough without the promise of religion, and I was always pleasant to him. I kept the name of my first other body. It amused me, as it seemed neither male nor female, and there were many more forms to follow, of both sorts. I am not Yi, the bodies do not crumble around me. I simply move to the next fleshy costume when I tire of them. I do not truly understand what it is in the spirit of a Yi which corrupts the body around it, but I was never to suffer that dissolution. I was a good student. Eventually, I even helped the man dressed in the moon to pass to his next body. I knelt reverently and cut open his stomach and prepared the next body for his passing. I placed the white stone on his new tongue. I was the first face he saw with his new eyes, which were wide and violet as a field of lilacs. The eyes of a still lovely dowager who had died of chill. It was in that body that the man dressed as the moon became my lover. The Yi are in truth neither male nor female, but follow the desires of their host bodies, and there never was a dowager who did not yearn to have a young prince as her paramour. We passed many years in this way, and even when the dowager's flesh became grey and cratered, I did not mind. I kissed those peeling, pock-marked limbs, and they were sweet, sweet as dried gardenias. We continued in this way until we had exhausted each other, for neither was there ever a dowager who did not eventually grow bored with her beardless playmate, and I went from that house into the world. All this I learned, all this I performed. When I left his house, no Nurian corpse wrangler could ever have approached my knowledge, though her lust for it might burn like winter timber. When my parents died, I took their bodies. Ah, the debauch to which I subjected those limbs, I punished them in their own skin. But I am not Yi. I do not take bodies in order to achieve some mystical union with a mythical moon. What I do for pleasure and for profit, and it is pleasant enough. I am not bound by their laws. I need wear no barnacled cloak, and so I move among the people of Shadukium unknown and unmarked. And only once or twice have I been too impatient to wait for a creature to die. For I am not Yi. I can take them while they still breathe. I am not ye. I will go on forever, in whatever body I choose, and the moon will never take me. The tale of the Black Papas continues. So put your dainty little mark on one of those famous parchments. It has always been true that a figurehead's only power lies in her golden seal. No one cares what you say, but we all care what you sign. Give me access to the Caliph's rose-tinted gold, sign open the door to the great vault, and I will keep your spirit safe until the time comes for you to return in a body as ravishing or deformed as you wish, until your name is forgotten by all but the most dotard librarians in the dreaming city, and no one will drag an army after you again. You don't want... I looked down, blushing. What, your firstborn child? Use of those lissom limbs? I'm not a monster out of some child's tale. I have no need of living bodies, and children are more costly and troublesome than beasts twice their size. Do you think there is a pleasure of the flesh I have not sampled? I do not need the Caliph's trash. I am a magician. It is a vocation like any other, and I require remuneration for my services, as any other tradesman would. Would you try to pay for grain with unborn babes? I think not. Do not insult me. I am no less skilled than a miller grinding his seed. I nodded humbly, and the necromancer kissed my shuddering lips then, and my brow, my hair, my chin. It was not in lust that his lips brushed my face, but as a strange sort of seal on the bargain as I eagerly scrawled his demand onto a used and crumpled leaf of paper. On the one side it demanded that the merchant monks of the Coral Tower open their vaults to the Caliph. On the other it demanded that the vault of the Caliph be opened to Marsili. What do I do now? How do I know you will keep your promise? I asked, clutching my elbows to my sides. You will know because I have sworn it, and you are the trusting kind. You may want to work on that the next time you see this city from the inside. This is Shadukium after all. Here are the trusting found every morning in the gutter, one gutter or another. You need do nothing more, sweet Ragnhild, little ragged girl, left all alone. He reached forward and wound a thin length of hair through his fingers, and then with a sharp flick of his wrist tore it from my head. Wait to die. With that, he retreated from the antechamber, bowing gratuitously as he went. And die I did. The Nurian Papas dragged me from my seat by the ear, as though I were no more than a misbehaving child, and forced me to my knees before my own altar. With a strange, curving silver knife, she cut my tongue from my mouth, and the taste of blood, the meaty, metallic taste of my blood, flooded my mouth. I screamed. I thought there would never be an end to my screaming. She moved the knife in the air speculatively with ridiculous attention. I noticed its sickle shape, its hilt, its fine engraving. In the midst of pain, like stones breaking open the knife, filled my vision. I thought then it would be my nose next, or my eyes. I did not understand yet the shape of zealotry. Gifron, the savior of Alinor, ripped my dress from collar to waist and cut my breast from my body, as if carving a roasted bird for her supper. But when they had sloughed to the floor with a sickly, wet sigh, she leaned into me, her breath brushing my ear. I have saved you, poor wretched pawn. Now you may go to the dark as a sacred androgyne, and no door of alabaster or diamond will be closed to you. That is your heroine, priest, this lying whore who forswore her God in order to kill an innocent, and then forswore her oaths of office with her adherence to her mad faith. What is Alinor but a bedchamber where you may luxuriate in lies and blasphemies, convincing yourselves they are virtues? It tied me to that wet, grassy hill, pressing up under my back like the bones of the moon, and the soldiers dangled these chains in my face, mocking me. It was the only gold, they said, I would ever get from Alinor. The rest is simple, unutterably common. The sun took my flesh away in its arms, and the moon whitened my bones to dust. I fell away from myself into some deep well of dreaming. I recall nothing from the last gasp until I awoke, washed in gray light. The necromancer Marsili had bound me bodiless in some strange glass vial, and I watched him as the years flew by like blackbirds. Sometimes he was a woman, sometimes a man, sometimes a child as he had been when he first came to me. But I learned to recognize him in each body, the upturn of the eye, the cruel, crooked mouth, the gestures of his hands. I learned, and more than that. The necromancer performed many horrible things in his workshop, and I learned from him all the magic he learned from his bodies. After all, he was the only thing I saw for all those years. I had nothing to do but become a student of his every sigh and gesture. And yet he waited so long. I thought he had forgotten me, that I would be stuck in a bottle like a scrawled note forever. But one midnight, when I had almost lost the memory of what it was to feel my own flesh, he picked up my vial and brought it to a long table where a golden-haired corpse lay stiff and still. You are only a legend now, Ragnhild. It is safe to come out, safe to live. The world only remembers you as a ghost in the closet, a wight on the grassy hills. He gestured at the glassy-eyed corpse on his knotted elmwood table. I keep my word, as any merchant does. She loved a boy her parents could not accept and starved herself to death for the lack of him. Terribly romantic. Are you ready? Is she sufficient? He sensed my consent in some fashion of his own, and when I woke again, my lids were fringed in lashes pale as raw flax. The weight of a body pulled once more at my bones, and the last vapors of a white stone were still dissolving on my tongue. I think that we will stop there for the night and pick up with the Assassin's Tale tomorrow. I don't have anything to wet my throat, but does anyone have any questions they want to ask? Here's where I pick up a glass of wine and sip it, except I forgot to pour one. So I don't think there's any other background there that I didn't talk about yesterday. Did I venture into Portland? Not today. I worked today. I worked on my new middle grade novel, which does not have necromancers in it. I played Animal Crossing and worked on my novel, took care of my kid a little bit. Heath is ill, so I had to split things up a bit today. I'm glad you enjoyed it. Glad you liked it. I do have a fondness for poor Ragnhild. But yeah, I don't remember what happens next at all, so I don't remember what happens to her. I mean, it's so strange and embarrassing to say that I don't remember. Like, it was everything to me at one point. It was all I thought about. These parts of the book, quite literally all I thought about. Sort of odd story of the Orphan's Tales is that I was publishing with Prime Books at the time, which is a small press, and I gave him the manuscript of the first book, the Book of the Steps, so everything you've already heard, and my editor, in an act of magnanimity, he has never repeated, I think, said, this is much more commercial than your other stuff, and I'm going to send it to my friend at Random House. And that was fine. And like 8 months later, the editor got back to me and said, I need to see the next book before I made a decision, but your editor says it's almost done, so that shouldn't be a problem. I had not even begun it. So I spent the last 4 months that I lived in Japan doing nothing but writing the Book of the Sea. And it really was everything in my head for those months, and more when I was editing and writing the next one. But God, like, now it's just all gone. It's been scooped away by 18 years of life. If the choice were put before you, which tower would you choose at Alinor? I'm not sure. I mean, St. Sigrid's pretty good. Probably St. Sigrid. No spoilers. But there's a lot of good choices. Honestly, at this point, I could have written a whole book about those towers, and I certainly remember working out everything. I think there's a whole bit about explaining the patricides, and every tower's religion is good to the people who are in it and bad to the people who are not. It's none of this is meant to like say that patricides are good, or being androgynous is not good. These are just people, very complex people, who have a faith and choose to follow it, to good or evil or both, as it comes. It's very historical that way. Was there any particular fairy tale or fable that originally sparked your imagination that sort of guided you towards what you'd eventually do? I mean, in general, probably Snow White and Persephone. I've told this story a few times, but my parents were divorced when I was very, very young, and I went back and forth between my dad's house, which was in Seattle, where it was cold and dark, and my mom's house in California, where it was hot and bright. And so the story of Persephone seemed to have been made for me when I was a tiny thing. And I also look very much like my mother. And you can see my coloring. It's very Snow White-y. So I think that those early stories that seemed to be so much about my life. I had a stepmother that I had a rough time with, and those stories seemed so true to me, and not really fairy tales at all. I mean, like the glass coffin bit seemed a little over the top, but I was small. I didn't know that glass coffins weren't really a thing. They are kind of a thing in the Vatican and stuff, but yeah, and Lenin's tomb. Now my brain's just like, glass coffins, But, in those stories, like, you don't grow up and patch things up with your stepmother, which is what happened to me. And they turned out to not be documentaries, but fairy tales have always been a big part of my mind. And there's also this book by Diane Wachowski, who's a poet that I very much admire, called Medea the Sorceress. And it's a series of poems and letters and postcards and all kinds of stuff. It's really one of the best poetry collections that I think ever. It's wonderful. But it is really sort of revolves around the story of she gave up 2 children for adoption when she was young. She sort of maps that onto Medea, and it's kind of what sparked the notion of mapping my own life onto mythology for me. How is Avila after her wild adventure? Oh, they're still laying like mad. We've got like 4 dozen eggs in our refrigerator, and we've been giving them away. So yeah, they seem all right. We had the dog slipped off the leash and made a beeline back for the chicken coop, but I managed to, while holding a toddler in my arms, run fast enough to catch her before she could do any further damage to them. They all seem to be fine. They're tough girls at this point, tough old ladies. Yeah. Well, if you have any more questions, go ahead and type them in. I'm going to do our outro business here. You can find music based on these books at sjtucker.com. You can follow my Twitter at Cat Valenti. You can subscribe to my Patreon, Cat Valenti as well. You can catch up with all of these at the archive if you've missed any at Cat Valenti Live on YouTube. And there is a tip jar in my Instagram profile, as well as one on my website at catherinemvalenti.com. There's absolutely no requirement to tip me anything at all, but these are terrible times for everyone, and artists particularly. So if you are moved to put something in the witch's hat, I will love you forever and deeply appreciate it, and thank you in person on the next stream, because times are garbage. Not so much the end times, just the garbage times. So, and for legal reasons, this is not an audiobook, this is a play. Tomorrow we will pick up again with The Assassin's Tale at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. And tomorrow will be our 1-month anniversary together. We've been doing this every night for a month, and you can hear the month in my voice. and probably see it in my lack of I've been wearing less and less makeup as time goes by. Like the first time I did contouring and everything, now I'm just like get that gun from The Simpsons and just fire it at my face. So yeah, thank you all so much for tuning in. It's so wonderful to spend these evenings with you. It really helps me a lot. I hope it helps you too. We're all in this together. And I will see you on the flip side. Bye, everyone. Have a lovely evening.